Hello, folks. Just a little update on some of the breaking news. I should be back to regular live streams in August, so look forward to that. And there is a new Unredacted Tonight coming out this coming Thursday, whatever that is, July 10th, maybe. Yeah, let's go with 10th. But okay, let's talk about Trump's big, beautiful bill that he has forced out like the government taking a giant shit. He has forced it through, and it really is a sign of desperation of the U.S. fossil fuel, U.S. petro economy. It is a sign of desperation as to where the ruling elite are, and this is kind of the last few years of extraction before it all collapses. You know, when a bank is burning down, you take what you can and you run with it. So his giant bill, which, well, let me just show you some of this from Stephen Semler. Just a quick chart in terms of what's in this bill, and you may already know this, but and by the way, all the smaller kind of offensive things that are in this bill, I've covered that before in previous live streams, but this is more of an overarching view. But as Stephen Semler says, it's impressive in a perverse sort of way how the bill manages to be both brutally austere and incredibly expensive at the same time. The Congressional Budget Office projects that Trump's mega bill will reduce spending over the next decade by $1.2 trillion. But for every dollar in spending saved, nearly $4 in revenue are lost through its tax cuts for the richest Americans. The big, beautiful bill is almost twice the cost of the American Rescue Plan during COVID. That's $3.4 trillion cost for this big, beautiful bill. We got to come up with a new name for it. I don't know what people are calling it. Big bowel movement bill? I'll go. Since I said he forced it through like a giant shit, I'll call it the big bowel movement bill. Big billionaire bill. I imagine a lot of people are calling it that. Anyway, 3.4 trillion compared to 1.8 trillion for the American Rescue Plan. The Penn-Wharton budget model projects that workers will work more, earn less, and ultimately won't be able to make up for the losses caused by atrophied social programs under the new law. Not just atrophied, but gutted social programs under the new law. And here is a chart showing how people will benefit from this amazing new bill. Well, if you're making over $174,000 a year, then you're likely to save $50,000 in taxes. So if you're making over $174,000 a year, then this is going to be awesome for you. And the ones who will be most awesome for billionaires and multi-millionaires. If you're making 93,000 to 174,000, you will likely make $13,000 a year in saved taxes. But below that is where it gets ugly. If you make $51,000 to $93,000 a year, you will likely lose $2,000 a year in raised taxes. If you're making $17,000 to $51,000 a year, so now we're getting to more poor Americans, mostly poor, you are going to owe an extra $10,000 basically. And if you were making under $17,000 a year, barely over $1,000 a month, then you are going to lose $24,000 a year, according to this analysis. Projected financial gain or loss that's the Penn-Wharton budget model. But anyway, besides the fact that it completely fucks your average Americans, which you would expect from Donald Trump and the richest who created this bill, there's a great, a pretty good analysis by Nefad. I'm really liking his stuff recently. He, runs the Age of Transformation website and created it, and talking about how we're in a planetary phase shift. And I've done some discussion of his work as well recently. But anyway, this is titled American Fossil Capitalism. I prefer petro-capitalism, but we can go fossil. I like that. It's going extinct. Good. American fossil capitalism doubles down on its own doom. And that's really what it is. This is a death cycle. This is a death cult. And the richest people in the world are just speeding it up because it enriches them even more. So, and they figure, well, once we've burned it all down, it'll probably the true ramifications, the worst ramifications, the one that could actually impact me will come, 50 and 100 years from now. So who cares? Appears to be their thought process. The competing dynamics of systemic re-entrenchment and emergent transformation have rarely been more sharply illustrated than this week. In the United States, the House passed Trump's sweeping budget bill, a clear assertion of fossil capital power, slashes clean energy tax incentives, boosts fossil fuel subsidies, and locks in structural. I've never been good at saying structural. Never, even when I say it correctly, I don't enjoy it. I'm not. I get done with saying structural, and I'm like, I feel like that didn't feel right. Still felt kind of gooey. It's kind of gooey around the edges. Structural advantages for centralized extractive industries. This legislative rupture is not just a national redirection. It is a global signal of regime consolidation within a decaying paradigm. I love all the terms that, like, this system is decaying, it's desperate, it's going extinct, it's fossil, it's fossilized. It is just the octogenarian system, both in terms of the people who are running the show, like Donald Trump, and in terms of how the system just seems old and done. At the same time, Europe endured its first 42 degrees Celsius heat wave of the year. This is like 100 degrees, basically, of Fahrenheit. A physical manifestation of ecological breakdown compounded by feedback loops of inaction. Schools and outdoor labor systems shuttered, public health systems strained, and still emissions climb. And if you follow my stuff, if you follow Nefad's med stuff, you of course are well familiar with discussions of how the petro-dollar, is underneath. It undergirds all of this. And as long as the US dollar is tied to pumping as much fossil fuels, as much oil as possible, then climate change will continue to spiral out of control. And, for any of you who are like, I saw Joe Rogan and he said something about how we're actually in a cooling phase. No, we're fucking not. And you're an idiot. And at least on that topic, so is Joe Rogan. 99.9% of all scientific peer-reviewed studies show that man-made climate change, man-made climate crisis is happening. Okay? 99.9%. This is not a couple of rogue scientists. This is almost all of them. And, maybe I'll do more on this some other time. But when Joe Rogan had Bernie Sanders on, he pulls up a Washington Post article. Bernie Sanders never seen it. And Joe Rogan goes, look at this. Even Washington Post said we're in a cooling period. And if you actually look at what the Washington Post article said, which, by the way, you should never trust the Washington Post. They're garbage. But if you actually look at what they said in the article, they didn't say we're in a cooling period. They said the world is still in a cooler period than it has been in some other times in the past of the planet when humans were not here. And the article said, which everyone knows that, we're at the tail end of an ice age. So that is not some shock statement. And the other thing it said, which is really the point of the article, is that quick changes in temperatures, whether quick chilling or quick warming, have had drastic consequences for the things living on the planet. Big surprise. Mass extinctions have resulted from quick cooling or quick warming. And what are we seeing right now? Crazy quick warming. Quicker warming than this planet has ever seen, with the exception of like the asteroid lighting the skies on fire. Actually, that was quick cooling because it did. Okay. It lit the skies on fire for like a year or something. And then it was a quick cooling because obviously no sunlight could get through, but you get my point. So Joe Rogan, got completely the wrong concept out of that article from the Washington Post and thought, because he didn't actually read the article, he just read the headline, he thought it said, hey, the world is cooling, which is not what it said at all. Trump's budget bill marks a strategic deceleration of the U.S. energy transition by gutting tax credits for wind and solar projects. We need to, of course, move away from fossil fuels in all ways possible. And we're not, Trump's gutting the little Band-Aids that were put on. There was very little movement created by the Biden administration for that. But of course, this is the tearing up of the tiny bits that were created. Simultaneously, hedge funds have begun exiting oil and gas stocks at the fastest rate in nearly a decade, suggesting not only price instability, but declining long-term confidence in fossil profitability. Now, I think there's several reasons why the hedge funds, the Wall Street is realizing that fossil fuels are not going to be as profitable as they used to be. One has to do with the cost of extraction now, because it's more difficult than it used to be. You have to go into deep sea trenches, you have to go into fracking, etc. But outside of that, it's been going on for a while. But outside of that, you have the instability with Israel and their genocide and their attacks on Iran. And so the question of will oil continue to be funneled around the world easily with all of that going on? And it seems unlikely. And then probably the last part of the calculation, or at least one of the other parts of the calculation that the Wall Street is making as they pull out of fossil fuel stocks, is that China and some other places, but mainly China, are coming up with incredible sustainable energy models. That is, their technology is just increasing at a crazy rate. There was an EV company, or maybe it was Huawei, came out with a battery that, anyway, I can't remember the company. It might have been Huawei, but seems like it may lead to an electric car with a area, length of battery that could be 1,800 miles, which right now, if you have an electric car, most of them are 300, 350 miles on a charge. But on top of the 1,800 miles, like some crazy amount, a battery that can supercharge in 5 minutes. Right now, the fastest you can probably charge your EV in the US is, probably 20, maybe 30 minutes. So to get it down to 5, to get it basically almost the same as filling up a tank of gas at a gas station it's just crazy game changer. And you're doing that for a fraction of the cost of oil. They're showing that we're in the final days of a collapsing system that must collapse for our survival. And the US and Donald Trump are doubling down. No, that thing that's setting the world on fire that we should absolutely be done with, we are doing everything we can to continue pushing it. It is a sign of desperation. It is a pathetic sign of doubling down on this death cult. And that's what they do. That's what the sociopaths at the top do. So good for them. And thank you very much for this big bowel movement bill that Trump has just forced through Congress. Okay, I'm going to be bringing you a few more of these shorter clips, shorter stories in coming days. And I will be back to my regular live stream schedule in August. But there is a new Unredacted Tonight coming out this Thursday. Hope you'll check it out. And I'll see you then. Keep fighting.